Let's talk about the BBC. You will have noted, what was it, 2 days ago or something like that, the BBC issued the results of a long-running review. They brought in management consultants to take a look at the toxic culture, the alleged toxic culture at the BBC. We are talking, of course, about, well, it goes back a long time, doesn't it? Martin Bashir, conning Princess Diana, Jimmy Savile, Huw Edwards, Russell Brand, Greg Wallace, the Strictly bullying row, and on it goes. Of course, the recent Gaza documentary starring the son of a Hamas terrorist that they didn't actually tell us was the son of a Hamas terrorist. I would suggest that the BBC's toxic culture, toxicity, saturates the BBC, and yet this review that the BBC paid for came out, no, we don't have it's fine actually, we don't have a toxic culture, but we could do better. Could do better. Talk about understatement of the century. Let's talk to Defund the BBC campaigner Rebecca Ryan. Hi, Rebecca. Long time.
Hi, Kevin. Long time no see.
Good to see you. I mean, this was epic, even by the BBC standards. Epic gaslighting, wasn't it? Yeah, we've had a look. We've marked our own homework. We've had a look into it. And the good news is we don't have a toxic culture. Yes, you do. Unbelievable, isn't it?
Absolutely outrageous, isn't it? And they think they do this kind of thing all the time whenever they've had a massive scandal. They spend millions of pounds of licence fee payers' money on marking their own homework, and then miraculously they come up with these findings that, no, we've got no toxic culture here whatsoever. And in the meantime, whilst they were carrying out that scandal, as you said, you had the Russell Brand incident, you had Tim Westwood, you had Greg Wallace, all of that going on. They can't keep up with their scandals. You know, they can't do these internal reviews quickly enough. And it's just shocking. You know, this new guy, Shahs, obviously thinks that, you know, he can do some tough talking, but we all know it's not going to change anything.
Well, exactly. I mean, I was thinking about this. I mean, what in your view, if there was a proper review, obviously they'd say, we have corporately, arguably, the worst toxic culture in the history of broadcasting, maybe in the history of the damn world, never mind about broadcasting. What should be done to sort the BBC out, in your expert view, Rebecca?
I don't think anything can be done to sort the BBC out other than make them accountable to those people that pay for them, and so get rid of the licence fee. I think that's the only way they're going to, you know, actually change anything. Because you know what the BBC's answer would be here? It would be to some kind of, you know, diversity exercise where actually if we just replace all of the middle management with other people who are even more woke, then that might solve things. You know, the BBC doesn't know anything else other than that. So I don't think there's anything with the current funding model in place that they can be doing to force change about.
I mean, the stepfather of Huw Edwards' victim, this young man, this vulnerable young man that Huw Edwards gave, what was it, 30 grand to give him dirty pictures. He said, the stepfather said that they're papering over the cracks. People knew what was going on with Huw Edwards and they ignored it. Those people should be sacked. He's right, isn't he? I mean, that's what the BBC does. When you get these scandals, no one gets sacked. I mean, even Martin Bashir didn't get sacked. He got rehired as the religious editor. You know, no one gets sacked at the BBC. That's half the problem, isn't it?
They don't get sacked. They get promoted, don't they, these guys? Decades and decades, they cover up for them and they promote them. And then finally, when it becomes too much, you know, or after they've died, then we all find out what really happened. But this report actually sort of shows that there's this culture within the BBC where people can't complain. They're told, you know, if they make a complaint to like their line manager, they're told, oh, that'll be career damaging if you say anything about these so-called untouchables, which we all know is what the BBC considers its top talent. You know, you can't, they were basically allowed to get away with whatever they want. And as we see with Gary Lineker all the time, not accusing him of what Huw Edwards did, but certainly would be able to sort of run his mouth on Twitter without any comeback. And it's the same thing. And I don't see how they bring this to a close with just some sort of tough words on a press release to say, oh, look, we've decided there's no toxic culture, but, you know, we won't stand for this any longer.
Yeah, it says this is a joint note to the staff from the chairman, Samir Shah, as you say, and Director General Tim Davie, a man who staggers from one scandal to the next with monotonous regularity constantly and never ever actually resolves them with any satisfaction at all. But they said, today is the day we draw a line in the sand. I presume they mean literally. They just went out and drew a line in some sand, because this is a ridiculous thing to say. And here's one thing. Here's a good way to get started, Tim, if you want to do something about restoring the reputation of the BBC. Sue Huw Edwards for that 200 grand you paid him after he was charged with child sex abuse offences.
Absolutely. I mean, that would be a great start, wouldn't it? The guy knew obviously what he'd done, and he knew that in time he was going to have to plead guilty to it, so that all the sordid details didn't come out in public. And yeah, let's get the money back. I think it's outrageous for the BBC to say, oh, well, we can't, because of his contract, we can't get that money back. Well, then rewrite your contracts, because this is British taxpayers' money, essentially. It is a tax on live TV, and you can't have the British taxpayer funding paedophiles, it's
exactly, and I believe they could get this money back if they wanted to, because they go, oh, it's his contract. Well, everybody who works for a company, in their contract of employment, if you bring the company into disrepute, that breaks your contract. Huw Edwards, to say he brought the BBC into disrepute is somewhat of an understatement. They should go for him. That would make the public think, well, this BBC maybe is beginning to learn the meaning of morality.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it would be a good start for them to do that. I think we're probably not going to see that, but yeah, it would be really refreshing, wouldn't it? And it might start people thinking, the BBC is beginning to deliver on some kind of responsibility to the British public. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think the BBC isn't really going to change. These are all just sort of tough words that are aimed to make the BBC look better, to whitewash over all of these scandals that happen time and time and time again. And we'll have business as usual from the BBC.
Last word, Rebecca, about the veneration of stars at the BBC. I mean, I've worked at the BBC. I mean, anyone who sits in front of a microphone, they treat them like the King and Queen of Sheba. Oh my God, it's the talent. I used to go in and do these interviews about television when I was a TV critic, and I remember sort of sitting outside these studios, and guys coming out and saying, "Are you the talent?" And I go, I don't think so, no. But so they've got, in their DNA, they worship the people who are on screen, the people who do the interviews, the stars, if you like. And this is half the problem. This is why Huw Edwards got away with what he did. This is why, if you like, maybe Greg Wallace, although I think Greg Wallace probably got quite a hard deal here, but there's a big problem. They talk about these untouchables. We have some stars who've got to learn that they're not bigger than the BBC. Well, the BBC treats them as bigger than the BBC. Look at Gary Lineker.
Exactly. And this is the thing, is these people behave as if they are untouchable. They do get away with these things. And that is why we're seeing scandal after scandal from these so-called top talent, because they have been allowed to get away with it. And I don't see how this sort of hotline that they're going to set up, so that people can snitch and whatever, is actually going to make a difference. Because, as we've said, we've got people whose line managers or team members are sort of saying, well, it's going to be career limiting if you do that. So they're going to have an anonymous hotline. I mean, it remains...
I've told you before, Rebecca, that one of Huw Edwards' victims at the BBC, because he was notorious for spotting out the pretty boys and then sending them texts and WhatsApps and pictures. So this friend of mine was targeted by Huw Edwards with lots and lots of pictures and things like that you wouldn't want to see. And in the end, he's a nice guy, he's not a troublemaker. He went to HR and said, look, I want to make a complaint. You've got to stop this guy doing this. My friend, by the way, is about 24. And guess what HR said to him? Are you sure you want to do this? Huw Edwards is a very powerful figure at the BBC. That's what will happen to people who use this hotline, trust me.
Absolutely. Well, they need to just gut the HR department, don't they, by the sounds of it? If that's what an HR response is, are you sure you want to do this? Because that's anti-HR. So the whole lot of them need to be shipped out. There's probably hundreds of people working in the BBC HR department, isn't there? All sort of giving this same message. So they need to be fully gutted and reinstated. But yeah, I don't see that there's any major changes coming from the BBC on this. And we're just, counting the days before the next scandal comes along.
Yeah, it'll be about 3 days, I expect, if they last that long. Get ready, Tim. You know what's coming your way, because that's what happens to your whole life, isn't it? Well, Rebecca, great to talk to you again. Come on again soon. Rebecca Ryan there, campaigner for Defund the BBC. In fact, she's in charge of it.